Last weekend, I left the valley and I took a trip to Bethesda, Maryland. I wasn't there for rocks, but I just couldn't help myself. I came back home with a decent amount of them. Today, we're going to examine these rocks. We're going to cut a bunch of them open, and finally, we'll see what some look like polished. In the end, we'll have 4 cabochons to look at. The real star of the show today comes from one of these here on the table, in my opinion, but you'll have to wait to find out which one it is. I did my best to clean these rocks off, but they're obviously not perfectly clean. Let's start off by looking at this large one. I have some rocks that I've tumbled in the past that are kind of similar, so we'll see how similar they really are by the end. You can see there's definitely similarity with the color, but it doesn't look like this new rock has that same rutilated look to it. Let's try looking at it with a flashlight. It's definitely translucent, and it doesn't look like there are serious fracture patterns in it, which is a great sign. This one is definitely going to be one to keep an eye on. So how about these other pieces? They're quite dark, but they look like a similar material to the first. All right, so they're definitely translucent. It'll be interesting to see what's actually inside. And then we have a couple green ones here. I have plenty of green epidote, or maybe what you'd call an epidotized metabasalt. And then I have epidote and quartz. You might remember these from a previous video. But this one is definitely different. Even though with this one, there does look like what might be quartz here in white. This other one is pretty small, so maybe it'll make good tumbling material. Now that we know a bit more about our rocks, we're heading over to the saw. Let's go ahead and start cutting that first rock. We'll see if this is a super thick crust of mud covering up something interesting right now, or if maybe that really is the exterior of the rock. I was really hoping that maybe it was some sort of dark red quartz that was giving off just a dark colored effect, but you can see pretty clearly that it was just crust. Let's get a closer look here anyway. I definitely wasn't expecting this degree of clarity. I think it's safe to say this is probably quartz. After that first rock, I have no idea what to expect with this second one here. Oops. Well, I guess that break ruined any surprise. But let's look a bit closer. More quartz, but a lot of fractures. Looks like maybe it's kind of brittle. All right, now let's move on to our third rock. Darn, it's just more brittle quartz. This one looks like it has more staining on it, though. I don't hate it, but it's pretty generic. There are a lot of rocks like this out here. Our fourth rock will be the one I was the most excited about in the beginning. I'm using my vice grip just to make sure I get a perfectly straight line, although this material isn't super hard, so I probably didn't need to do that. Alright, so you can see there's definitely some change to the color up here. I was hoping for a bit of a pattern, but this gradient is pretty cool too. I'm going to cut a slab or two that I'll use later on my flat lap. So here you can really see the red start to show in the gradient. Both of these will definitely make really neat cabochons for pendants. But before I go to start forming these into cabochons, I'm going to keep cutting. We've had some duds in the batch of rocks I was planning to cut for today, so I'm going to just keep powering through the rocks that I found in Bethesda. It's kind of an icky yellow. It reminds me a bit of bile. Ugh. All right, next up. Okay, well, that's not too bad. Here we have some really nice clarity like what we saw earlier. I'm a little bit worried with all these fractures that some of these rocks are not going to tumble or polish very well. Alright, I know we've cut a lot of rocks that had really thick crusts of mud on them, but I'm pretty sure that this is something different. This rock was pretty quick to cut, so it's probably fairly soft, but let's look and see what's inside. Whoa, I was not expecting that. It has this super cool snowy pattern with a nice dark black. Boy, if this takes a polish, I'm going to be ecstatic. Now, to the flat flap. I tried for a minute to do something with that flat green one from earlier, but the green seems to not run all the way through it, and I don't want to wind up with just a slice of quartz, so I'm just going to tumble that one. So I moved on to the slab that I cut from that larger rock that I really liked. It's definitely going well. It's not too soft, but it's not so hard that it's taking an eternity. I'm just going to freehand this one. I'm going to go with a neat little asymmetrical shape here. I did spend some time with one of the quartzy looking clear ones, but it was just too crumbly. I really hope that they'll still be able to tumble though. The black and snowy one is quite soft, as I suspected, which isn't always a good thing. I was starting to get worried that none of these were going to turn out great, so I figured while I'm using the rough plate, I would go ahead and freehand that little green guy into a cabochon instead of using it for tumbling. Now, let's look at the results. All right, let's start off with this rock, since it's the one I was the most eager to polish. It's a little bit generic, I suppose, but I do like it. It's got a neat little shimmer to it in some places, although you can also see there's a bunch of fractures inside. I could probably make a pendant from it and hang it in either direction, really. Or I can just stick it with the others in my collection. Now, how do we think that surprisingly pretty rock turned out once I polished it? Pretty well, if you ask me. It was definitely really soft, but not so soft that it was hard to work with. I took that slab and I cut it in half, more or less, so one ended up getting this curved shape while the other's more of a triangle. The triangle still has some scratches on it that I need to work out, but since it's soft, that shouldn't take very long. Overall, this one turned out to be a really nice surprise. Finally, that rock that I polished out of despair when I thought I wasn't going to have anything worthwhile in this batch of rocks. Let's see if I should have just left it as tumbling material. Turns out this one's my favorite from the whole batch. Look at the way it catches the light. Isn't that just incredible? It's totally different from all the other green rocks that I have that I've polished before. I wasn't too far from the Serpentine Barrens Conservation Park when I found this, so maybe it traveled down a creek or something. I'm definitely going to have to go back someday and look for more because I love this green. All in all, I really lucked out. I got a fun day visiting with my family, and I came home with some rocks that will make great additions to my collection. Until next time, bye.